All right, hey everybody. It's October 17th. This is Dirk Weinheimer. I just want to spend a few minutes talking about how I draw Gann angles, specifically using the TradeStation platform. I know there's been a lot of conversation around the correct way to draw them. My friend Mark Lambert has shown, he's really done a lot of work to show the correct way to do it on the Thinkorswim platform. I've been able to translate that to the TradeStation platform, so hope this helps. I wanted to start real quick, just kind of where I'm getting some of my data from, straight from Gann himself. If you look in the basis of my forecasting method document right here in the beginning, he says the angles, he gives the angles that he uses, and you can see those right here kind of in the top of the screen, the angles that he uses. And so the first thing I did is I went to Excel, and I put in the angles, and then I literally took out a piece of grid paper and a protractor, drew the angles, and figured out what the rise and run that corresponded. So when I drew out an 86.25 degree angle, it's 16 up by 1 over, so that's 16 by 1 angle. And I did that with all of them, as you can see. And so the first step was translating to, what degree from Gann's original work is the 1 by 2, the 2 by 1, etc. That's for the daily. You'll see here different numbers for the 60 and the 5, which I'll get into how I use that. But essentially, it's simply I use the daily 60 and 5-minute charts, and so the slope, for example, of the 2 by 1 on the daily 63.75, because there's 24 hours in a day, that becomes 2 by 24 on the hourly chart, and because there's 288 5-minute bars in 24 hours, that's a 2 by 288 on the 5-minute chart. And so I'll show how I use that in just a second. So let me jump over to TradeStation here. It's the daily chart of the ES, which is what I trade mostly. So I won't get into all the rules of drawing Gann angles, but we'll just start from kind of the last pivot high and then the last important low, and I'll show you my current setup and how I got there. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the trend line tool, snap it to the last pivot low on the daily chart, and actually let me turn on my snap mode real quick, sorry. Okay. Extend it, and then I'm going to open that up. On the calculation tab, down at the bottom, you see Gann angle is one of your options. Select that. It defaults on mine 10 by 10. I don't use that. What I'm going to do now is put in my first angle, so I always want to start with the 1 by 1. And because we're on the daily, going back to my Excel, on the daily, it simply is just a 1 by 1. So hit OK, and it draws my 1 by 1, and you can see the low on the 15th was an exact hit. I'll then make a copy of that, or I can just redraw a fresh one. It really doesn't matter. Open it up, calculation, Gann. So my next angle up, if I go back to my chart, I'm going to go actually skip some of these lesser used ones and go straight up to the 2 by 1, and that gives me my next angle. And then I'm going to do one more. And I'm going to go with the, let's try the 3 by 1. Okay, and so, I could keep going, right, and draw them all, but I usually just keep 2 or 3 on because really just trying to frame the current action, right? So that would kind of be my starting point from the last major low, and then I always like also to go from the last significant top, which, it's a judgment call whether you want to work from this one or this one. I think both have significant hits. I'm currently working off of this last one here just because it's the last sort of pivot going on. This is kind of where it gets subjective, but it's kind of how I'm doing it right now. And because these are downward sloping, the rise is down, right? So it's down 1 point and across 1 in time. Okay, and you can see that was the top here was a perfect hit there. I'm going to draw just a few others. Let me just keep going down the, down the scale here, so to speak. It's a little bit labor-intensive and manual, but I'll tell you why I do it this way while I'm doing this, instead of using the Gann angle tool, which TradeStation does come with, it doesn't draw them the same. I don't know why. If I would replicate this off of this point, they'd look different and they're not as accurate. So I do a manually like this, and then also the advantage of doing them this way is that if I resize or do anything, it adjusts accordingly, right? So it makes it I can do what I need to do. And so what I've done here simply is drawn, the various Gann angles going up and down, and you can see the recent action has been framed perfectly the low, and as of now anyway, the high by these angles. And so all I've done, just to go back, is this is the -8 by 1, so that's 8 points down and 1 over. This is the -4 by 1, and I just keep going up the scale. Okay, so that's the daily. That's pretty straightforward. Now let's go to the 60-minute. Similar concept, except going back to my Excel, I've got instead of doing a 1 by 1, it's a 1 by 24, right? Because there's 24 hourly bars in a day, and so it's a similar process where I'll start from the last significant low, extend out my trend line, go to the Gann angle, and so I would always start, for example, with the 1 by 1 is really the 1 by 24, and you can see that's way down here. It's not really relevant to the current action, so I would immediately jump up to, let's say, like the 16, and okay, that's a little bit more relevant trend line, right? So that kind of helps me, and so I'll start drawing down from there. So once I find kind of the relevant where we are on the scale, I'm going to do the next one down, which is going to be the 8. Okay, so here's kind of my two Gann angles. And now when I get down to the 60-minute and even the 5-minute, I'll sometimes split the difference here. Let me show you what I mean. So that was the this one's the 8 and the 16. Between the 8 and 16 is 12, right? If you do the math. And so I'll sometimes put one in between there, but I always mark it with a dotted line because it's not as strong, right? It's kind of a half angle. So you can I do that, and then always from the top as well, come down, and let me put in, again, I don't really know where we are, so let me start with a -1 by 24, and actually that's a perfect hit, so I know that was a good one. Let me go and maybe just do one more down here. Maybe I'll do the -2 by 24. And again, this is the same as the negative of the 2 by 1. It's just I use 24 for the run because we're on a hourly chart. So that's kind of where I am. And you can see the recent high here was pretty much bounded by these angles. Now, one thing I know with some software and other ways, you have like to say a peak on a Friday. Friday on the futures anyway, you've got you're short a bar, right? Because of the truncated session. When you do it this way, the one good thing I like about TradeStation is because I'm not putting in an actual date and time, it doesn't matter whether this was on a truncated session or not because this slope, -1 by 24, is the same, right? It just measures the slope based on the rise and the run. So I kind of like that. I don't really have to worry about whether it's a weekend or not. So that's it, and then kind of on the 5-minute chart, it's no different. I just go back and instead of 1 by 24, it's a 1 by 288. Okay, so I don't know if I need to go into all that, but what I will do is go back to kind of my real, kind of show you what I'm working on, right? So this is kind of my real 60-minute chart that I'm trading off of. If you add price lines in there and time and other things, you can see how it can become a very effective tool. And then even down here on the 5-minute, I'll just show you guys that it does work. Here's the 5-minute drawn. So you look at this line, that's the 16 by 288, so that's the 16 by 1, basically. The bottom was perfectly on that. And I'm just kind of now watching the current action to see if what's going to happen here. But I hope this helps. That's how I'm drawing Gann angles on the TradeStation platform. Thanks a lot, everybody.